All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Put on your lead optimizer hat, because today we are prepping for a massive model training run. If you look closely, you'll see we've got two critical gauges we're keeping our eyes on the whole time. Think of the speedometer as our learning rate, and that precision gauge, that's our model's convergence. Our mission is to masterfully manipulate both of these to get an absolutely flawless training run.
Let's set the stakes right out of the gate. Training a modern multi-million parameter AI? It is not a game of hope. Precision requires braking. You absolutely cannot just pick a random number for your step size, cross your fingers, and walk away. Like the quote says, we aren't just guessing here, we are engineering the descent.
So, here's our mission briefing. We're going to cover the impossible compromise, the cold start, smooth braking, the math under the hood, real-world implementation, and finally, dodging traps. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The impossible compromise. Let's talk about the reality of parameter space.
We've got to understand why relying on a constant learning rate is just an absolute engineering failure. Think of it like driving. You're trying to get from your house to a really tight parking spot in a city clear across the country. If you lock your cruise control at a constant high learning rate, say 70 miles per hour, sure, you'll cross the country super fast. But what happens when you reach the parking lot? You slam into the curb at 70 miles per hour. In parameter space, we call that divergence. You just completely overshoot the minimum. On the flip side, if you're ultra cautious and lock it at 5 miles per hour to park safely, you're essentially going to stall in your driveway. It would take a month to even leave your neighborhood. We absolutely need dynamic speed control.
Moving on to Section 2, the cold start. Let's talk about thawing the engine for Adam. Picture step 1 of training. The weights are totally random, and the optimizer, it's completely frozen. If you're running the Adam optimizer, which, let's be real, is standard for transformers, its internal variance buffers are sitting there completely empty. It's exactly like a car sitting out in a freezing garage. The oil is thick and cold. If you just floor the gas pedal right then and there, boom, you get a NAND loss explosion. The engine literally blows up. To stop that, we use what's called a linear warm-up. We gently interpolate that learning rate from 0 up to our maximum value, safely idling the engine until it's ready to roar.
Check out the thermal shift happening here. At step 1, Adam is frozen solid. The weights are cold, blue, and stiff. Adam's bias correction at this stage basically forces it into a blind step, completely ignoring the real gradient magnitude. Taking a huge step right here instantly obliterates your activation distributions. So, what do? Step 2. We drop the learning rate to near 0. We safely idle. Then, by step 3, as we're taking those tiny, careful steps, the variance buffers actually start filling up with accurate statistics. The whole system turns warm, orange, and fluid. Finally, by step 4, the oil has thinned out, the mechanics are totally stable, and we can safely punch our speedometer to the absolute maximum learning rate.
All right, Section 3, smooth braking. It's time to talk about cosine annealing and actually landing this model. Once we've hit cruising altitude and really traversed the lost landscape, we've got to systematically prepare to settle into our final minimum. Historically, people used step decay, manually hacking the learning rate down by a massive chunk all at once. But man, that was like hitting a brick wall. It shocked the model, causing these horrible jagged spikes in the loss curve. No thanks. Instead, we use cosine annealing. Look at our timeline. Step 1000, we're on the highway, max speed. Fast forward to step 5500, we hit city limits, and the speedometer is smoothly halving. By step 10,000, we're pulling into the parking spot, just effortlessly gliding at 0.1 miles per hour. This continuous, buttery smooth deceleration lets the optimizer gently settle into wider, flatter minima. And as we know, geometrically flat basins generalize way better to unseen data than sharp, narrow ravines.
Section 4. The math under the hood. Let's strip away the magic, shall we?
It's time to look at the mathematical reality behind all this deceleration. Because it's not magic, it's calculated CPU engineering. Here is the cosine annealing formula. I know, it looks a bit dense, but it's actually beautifully logical. Your new learning rate is just your minimum rate, plus half the difference between your max and min rates. Then you multiply that by 1 plus the cosine of pi times your current step, all divided by the total steps. This is brilliant because it physically guarantees a continuous break. At the very start of the decay, that cosine value is 1, giving you the absolute maximum rate. When you finish, the cosine hits -1, totally canceling out the max and leaving you purely with your minimum rate. The drop is slow at first, rapid through the middle, and then it tapers off beautifully at the end.
Let's actually see this math in action. Say our max rate is 0.001 and our min rate is a tiny 0.00001 running across a 9,000 step decay phase. At exactly step 5,500, which is dead center, the exact halfway point of our decay, the fraction of the phase completed is 0.5. Well, the cosine of 0.5 pi is 0. Do the arithmetic, and the CPU computes a learning rate of exactly 0.000505, literally a nearly perfect half-size step. Our speedometer is perfectly mathematically calibrated.
But here is the absolutely crucial point, the real illusion of it all. The neural network knows nothing of this schedule. The network is completely blind. The scheduler is purely an external loop. At the end of a training step, the CPU takes mere microseconds to calculate that new scalar using basic arithmetic. It then iterates through the optimizer's parameter groups and forcefully overwrites the learning rate in ON1 time. This isn't happening on the GPU. We are literally just sitting on the outside, manually writing the brakes.
Moving to Section 5, Implementation and AI Usage, let's look at where this is actually deployed in the real world.
So, where in the AI landscape do we mandate these specific descent profiles? Well, different architectures demand entirely different physics. For pre-training LLMs like GPT or Llama, warm-up plus cosine decay is strictly mandatory. Without it, a transformer will just instantly destroy its residual streams and layer norm weights, period. Now, look at diffusion models. While they're technically scheduling noise variance, they use the exact same cosine math to ensure the model spends equal time learning across all noise scales. On the other hand, reinforcement learning, like PPO, that relies on a linear decay. You start high to figure out a rough policy, then linearly decay it down to near zero to freeze those good behaviors in place and prevent catastrophic forgetting.
Okay, final stretch. Section 6, Dodging Common Engineering Traps. Let's make sure we don't crash the mission.
Before I let you go, I need to brief you on the silent killers, the implementation traps that will absolutely ruin your training rods. First up is the classic off-by-one bug. In PyTorch, if you accidentally call the scheduler before the optimizer in your training loop, your very first step uses the wrong learning rate. And even worse, your final step will use a learning rate of 0, doing absolutely nothing. Always, always step the optimizer first. Second is epoch versus step confusion. If you tell your framework to decay over 10 steps, but the system assumes you met 10 epochs, your learning rate will crash to 0 instantly, leaving your model totally stagnant for the entire run. Finally, decay to absolute 0. If you set your minimum learning rate to a literal mathematical 0, your gradients are multiplied by 0. Your model just stops learning entirely. Always set a tiny floor, something like 1e-6, so the model can keep inching toward that perfect parking spot.
I want to leave you with a provocative frontier: schedule-free optimization. As we train models for months on end across thousands of GPUs, tuning these warm-ups and decay rates has become a massive engineering bottleneck. Researchers are actively looking into dual gradient approaches that dynamically adjust step size on the fly, with the goal of eliminating these explicit schedules entirely. But until that tech becomes the universal standard, you cannot just guess. You are the lead optimizer of your descent. Keep your eyes on that speedometer, warm up your engines, and always, always brake smoothly. Catch you next time.